Hi, I'm John, and welcome back to my N-scale long-distance Amtrak train build. I started this project a while back, but ran into some hard decisions that I'll tell you about during the program. The important part is I'm finally able to proceed with the next step of the project, which is lighting up the coaches. And not only will I light the coaches, but I will also add marker lights to the end of the train, just like what the real ones have. You can find a list of most of the tools and materials I used for this project in the video description below. So let's go to the workbench and get started. All right, so these are the models that I'll be adding the lights to. I have every car that would appear in an Amtrak long-distance train, including the transition sleeper, which is the one here on the bottom right. And this project is to duplicate what a long-distance train looked like, say, between 2005 to about 2018. These are the lighting kits I'll be using. They come from Kato. It's the 11-212. This particular box comes with 6 lighting kits. You can also get these individually in the 11-211. This has 1 lighting kit in it. So here's what comes in the kit. You have your instructions here. You have 2 copper contact strips. This white piece over here contains the light board and LED. This is a filter in case you want a warmer light in the train. And then this is your light pipe that sends the light all the way from one side of the coach to the end. So to take these coaches apart, you separate the sides and gently pull down. I'm going to use a wheel set here to pull down on. It's something that my index fingers can grab. And the shell just lifts off and reveals the interior here. And the interior is 2 parts. It's the top deck and the bottom deck. And it has copper contact strips that pick up the power from both trucks. Now, the way you can tell which side the light board goes into is it has all this additional plastic here and this slot. You'll notice if you look on the other end, there's nothing like that present. So this is the side that we need to install the contact strips and the light board into. The contact strips slide into these little slots here that are on that side of the interior. You have one on the slot closer and one on the slot farther away, and they push in under the seats. There's a little slot there. So here's the light board. It has the LED that shines into the car, and it has these 2 metal strips that contact the copper contact strips that we just stuck into those slots on this end of the car. So the trick is you just align those metal strips along with your copper contact strips and push the board down in this little slot here, and the tension from the copper strips that we put in will hold it in place. So I had to fiddle around with it a little bit because this light part was pointed downward. So I bent it back a little so it's more facing up. I'm going to put it on the track just to make sure it's working, and it is. So I always do stuff like this to make sure that everything's okay before I proceed to the next step. Now I'm looking at the color of the light, and I have to decide if I want to use the orange warming filter that the kit came with to make the light warmer. I like this cool white, so I'm going to leave my filter off. If you look at the light bar and figure out where these little tabs are, there's one here. You see how it sort of protrudes off the bar there? There's one here, and there's one here, and there's one here. You can feel them if you run your finger over it like this. Anyway, those tabs coincide with little nubs inside the shell. You can see one of them here, and it's kind of dark back in this part, but it's back there. And then there's 2 more on the close side of the shell. So this might seem counterintuitive, but the wide part on the light bar that's white goes on the far end. So the LED shoots the light through the center of the narrow part and then diffuses it out to the other end. Now, putting these in is a little tricky, and it may take some time for you to get it right. But the trick is you line up those little tabs that I showed you on the light bar with the nubs that are in the shell. And then once you have them lined up right, they'll slide over each other, just like this. And you'll know if you have them in right, because when you turn the shell over, the light bar does not fall out. So the important thing to know here is that the light board occupies this space at this end of the car. The design of this light kit is such that if you try to put it on backwards, there's no way it'll fit. There's just not enough room back on the other side. Now, to make sure you don't put the shell on backwards, you have to pay attention to this little tab. It lines up with this slot on the body. So I'm looking at this and I think I noticed that the light board seems to have been pushed down by the light bar, and this will cause it to not light properly. The LED has to aim directly into the light bar. So I've taken the shell back off and I'm going to carefully bend the light bar back up so that hopefully it'll aim directly into the light bar. So this proves to be a pretty finicky process. The car on the left has the LED not shining directly into the light bar, and you can see it's a lot brighter where the LED is. And the car on the right is a little better. So the trick here is you take the shell back off and you fiddle with the light bar, and then it creates more room on this end of the car where the LED is. And if it's in the right position, you can't see the white of the light board through this back window here. That's how you know it's aimed properly into the light bar. Something else I'm finding that I have to do with a lot of these is to bend these little contact bars slightly outward. Because I found that if I don't, when I push the light board assembly down into that slot on the end of the car, these contacts on this assembly and the copper contact strips push away from each other. So I found that by bending them out a little bit like this, when I push this assembly in, it will contact the copper strips. So after doing a few of these, you learn the tricks and you figure out where that little light bar needs to be up inside the ceiling of the shell. And it gets to be pretty easy by the time you're, on your fourth or fifth one. So before I install the final Kato lighting kit into the last car, I want to show you the setup that was based on plans from a friend of mine that you've seen here on the channel before, Alvin Ho. I took this schematic that Alvin found on the internet and gave to me, and gave it to my friend Seth, who installed it in this car as a test. So the power is picked up from the truck and runs into the series of electronic components here, and then back out and up to this LED strip. And you can see there's a lot of LEDs there, and they light the car very uniformly, as you can see in this picture. To be honest, I really like the result. It's more evenly lit than the Kato kit, but it's a bit too bright. Now that's easy enough to fix with more resistance, but the simplicity of the Kato kit installation won out, because I found that I was not able to make enough time to learn enough about the electronics to get motivated enough to build 8 more cars like this. That being said, I do want to thank Alvin for his inspiration and Seth for his help. Without those guys, I don't think I would have found enough motivation to get this project completed. One of the goals of this project is to add working marker lights on the final car at the rear of the train. So in order to do that, I need to figure out what order these cars normally appear in. So we're going to take a look at some of the videos I've taken of the Coast Starlight specifically and see how the cars are arranged on a typical Coast Starlight set. So this exercise made me discover what these cars are, because I didn't know. I've seen a lot of Amtrak long-distance trains, but never knew which coach was which car. I've even ridden the train and not known from the outside what it looks like. So here's what we came up with. Normally, we'll have 2 locomotives or more, and then a baggage car with what they call Phase 2 paint. Now, I have a Phase 2 baggage car from Rapido. It's not prototypically accurate for a modern long-distance train, but it looks right otherwise. Then we have this car. This is called the Transition Sleeper. These cars are easy to spot because they have the door low on one end and high on the other end. Then we have this regular sleeper, and usually you'll have a few of those. You can spot these because they have an extra window to the right or left of the door. Now, I didn't see these in the prototypes, but Kato has these listed as coach baggage cars, and you can see it has plated over windows. Then we have the dining car. You can tell the dining car because it doesn't have any windows on the bottom, plated over or otherwise. Next, we have this one with all the windows. They call this a lounge car. Some of the trains we watched the run-bys of had 2 of these. We only have 1 to work with, so I have to just figure out where it goes in the consist. On the majority of long-distance Amtrak trains that I've seen, the coaches come last. And those are the ones that have windows along the top and then 2 larger windows and a smaller window to one side of the entrance. So that makes the decision easy. We're going to light up the markers on the end of this coach. So the markers installed at the factory are these little plastic plugs. And if you turn the shell over and look in here, you can see that they're part of the glass kit that puts the glass through the end of the car. This little end glass piece is held in by the side glass pieces. So I need to remove those in order to get it out. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to run some fiber optics from the end of the car into the light pipe. And the thought process here is that the LED from the other end over here will feed the light through the light pipe into the fiber optics and then light up the marker lights at the end here. I'm going to take the light bar out first because it's holding everything in. Then you have to take out the side glass, which consists of sort of tilting it and then releasing it like this. And you do that to both sides. And then once you have the glass out, you'll be able to access the end glass. And then you have to be careful with the end glass. Don't do what I did. I pried it out using my skewer and it ended up shooting across the room. After searching for it for a minute, I finally found it, and now I'll show you a better way to take it out. Just reach in and pull it out. All right, now that we've had our fun, I'm going to snip off the little plugs that go into the back of the coach with these flush cut nippers. I got these from my friend Paul. He had a bunch of these. He's like, "Here, you want some of these?" I said, "Yeah, I think I could use those." So at this point, I have those little tabs nipped off, and I'm going to show you what I did, but I'm going to tell you a better way to do what I did. Before I tell you what my mistake was, there's something else that I need to tell you about, which is the fiber optics. So N-scale models like this will use 0.020 fiber optics for lights. I have a cheat sheet that I use to determine the size of the drill bit I need. In this case, I need a number 76 drill bit to make the holes for these fiber optics to go through. And now on to my mistake. I put the glass back in on the end, and then I replaced the glass on the sides to hold the glass on the end in. Then I drilled through from the outside of the car body through the little red part that I just nipped off the tabs from. In the process, I actually damaged the outside of the car just a little bit. It's not horrible, and probably not noticeable because the car is so small, but it's there and I know about it. What I should have done was use the nipped off parts as guides for my drill bit and just drilled it when it was outside the car body. In any case, however you end up doing it, this is the next step. So you can feed the fiber optic through the holes that just got drilled. And what I'm thinking I'll do is I'll feed the fiber optics through here, and I'm just going to set them up against the back side of that light bar so that I can test and see how well the light transmits to the outside of the car. To run my test, I need to put the car back together, but this bulkhead is in the way. If I try to put the car body back on, the bulkhead will squash the fiber optics or move them out of the way. So I'm going to use my rotary tool to modify the bulkhead just a little bit. I just need to take some material off to make it shorter. Now here's a side view where I've put the car body down on the desk just to be sure that the bulkhead is now low enough for the fiber optics to pass over it. So I put the model back together and I can see that the fiber optics are doing what I expected. They have little dots of light on the end of them, so this will work. So that's fine for a test, but I can't rely on fiber optics to remain pushed up against the back of the light bar. So what I'm going to do is drill little holes into the light bar itself so that when I put the model back together, I can fit the fiber optics back into the light bar, and that will ensure that they stay put, and it will also ensure that they conduct the light as effectively as possible. I'm using my soldering iron to flare the end of one of the fiber optics I'm going to use. And what this will do is create a lens that the light will be able to come out of. And it also holds the fiber optic in place in the hole. If I had red fiber optic strands, I would opt to use those. Since all I have is clear fiber optics, I'm using Tamiya Clear Red to paint the end of the fiber optic red. Now that I've painted them, I stuck them in the holes on the car just to dry. Next, I'll use my tweezers to carefully feed the ends of the fiber optics into the holes that I drilled in the light bar, and then I'll push them through the rest of the way using the back of my wooden skewer. And here's what it looks like when it's done. You can see that the fiber optics feed through the back of the car and into the holes I drilled in the light bar. I put everything back on the track, and here's what it looks like. Looking at this last picture, I think it's safe to say that the marker lights look at least as good as I had hoped. I spent a lot of time trying to think of a simple solution, and using the fiber optics was an easy and straightforward approach that I've never seen someone else do. I hope you've learned something, especially when it comes to the mistakes I shared with you when I was working on my models in this video. The long-distance Amtrak train is almost ready to run. The only thing left now is to speed match the locomotives, and I'm going to dedicate the next episode to just that. If you found this program useful or entertaining, consider supporting my work by signing up on Patreon at patreon.com/tsgmultimedia. You're also invited to hit the thumbs up button and share this video with your friends on social media. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.